So there's this anime titled Violet Evergarden. In episode 6, our protagonist Violet met an interesting character. His name is Leon. What? Creek. Alright.
Stefanotis.
His name is Leon.
Stefanotis.
His character is best described as James Franco role-playing as Tommy Wiseau. Wait, did it happen? Leon is treated as an outcast, and that led to him to have a bitter personality. Up until the third act of the episode, Leon finally opened up to Violet, revealing that his mother shamelessly left him in search of his father. She wanted to search her loved one and ignored the only child she had, and to him, it's the only guardian he had. As years pass, Leon is being treated as an outcast because he's an orphan, and Leon ended the story by saying, quote, "Love is blind," unquote, because the love you had for your partner can lead you and others astray. I'm quite fascinated by it. I mean, it is ironic that the whole episode is just him simping to Violet, but I've never heard this kind of romantic love story, and it got me thinking. Throughout our history, we've been taught about love and romance. Some says that love comes at first sight, some says that it was destined and it will always happen, but we know that's far from the truth because humans actually never touch their female counterparts. However, movies, especially in Hollywood, has always been putting these rhetorics in the forefront of our faces. I'm not saying that it's bad from the core, but most iconic movies from Terminator to Indiana Jones to The Mummy to Doctor Strange, it's always the very concept of a strong male character thinking they could mingle with anyone once they get close with and then shows no cares for anyone. Even in Doctor Strange, he starts making out with his ex who just broke up and right after they saw Strange's mentor die. It's a very bad form of writing characters as it's almost fallen into the category of being a narcissist and once that has been done so much that it disconnects the concept of love and romance. I'm pretty sure these examples are just pure king, especially in today's day and age with the Red Pill movement, which is definitely partially inspired by those characters and their stories. The disconnectivity of love and romance is at all-time high.
Earlier this month, U.S. Surgeon General shone a light on the problems associated with loneliness by declaring it an American epidemic. He said the growing isolation in society poses a health risk as deadly as smoking.
And what young people teach us, it's a culture that doesn't value the very things that young people say they want and need, and it's close relationships, friendships in which they can be emotionally intimate, where there's a deep understanding, they feel seen and heard and listened to. So what's stereotypic masculinity? Because of course, when you talk to boys and men, I've been interviewing boys and men since 1987, a long time. They have their soft sides and their hard sides, but we only value the masculine side, and we demean and mock the so-called feminine side.
But then there's a different kind of love, a true love, a love that has been so weaponized it is becoming every storyteller's favorite mantra, the love of undefeatable and power, the love of not just parents but also family. It is literally your go-to guide on how to make a proper story because it's the very idea of there's someone you're very close with for your whole life, and the feeling of knowing something bad happened to them obviously sends shivers down the spine. Every movie always uses this formula as one of the backbone for the characters of the story. The best example of this trope is definitely Star Wars, with the relationship between the Jedi Luke Skywalker and the opposition Sith and his father Darth Vader. They have a rather love-hate relationship throughout 3 movies.
Could you not be yourself? For 5 minutes!
But in the climax, when Luke was getting electrocuted to death as a punishment for not bowing down to the Occupation Galactic Empire, Darth Vader instead saved Luke from his demise and gave him his personal spaceship to get him the hell out of a killing machine that's about to explode. The character arc of Darth Vader hits even harder when you look at the prequel trilogy. Back when Vader was still a Jedi, he used to have a romantic partner named Padme. Sooner or later, because of that love, he starts to despise anyone around him, from being told off multiple times by his master, or being told by another master that you cannot be a Jedi master, or being in a forbidden relationship by the Jedi Council. That external businesses, including going on to espionage and war, corrupted him so much that it finally led to him witnessing his friends and people whom he adored to die. He even mercilessly murdered all the young Jedi students because he's just that fucked up in the head that all he cares is just Padme, his love, who in the end died giving birth to a twin, which one of them is named Luke. So you can see the massacre and death of children all because of love. Even the relationship of Vader and Padme is clearly the tragic and more twisted version of every classic romance story, just to point out the clear weakness of romance itself. What makes this concept of family even more compelling is that it has always become the motivation for the main protagonist, whether it's to make them think of a better future or trying to move on from a horrible past. Another good example is from Gran Turismo. I've watched this movie and I cannot stress enough on how freaking good the movie make out the relationship between our protagonist Jan and his dad Steve is. Because while the majority of the movie is overload of racing scene that gets you hooked, the movie doesn't shy away from what makes Jan a character, and every time Jan and Steve were in a scene, they always fought each other. The disagreement of Steve and Jan on whether he should continue his racing career pushed both of them to a final conclusion that maybe Steve is right, and maybe Jan is right. They come to a term where Jan was trying to convince him that he used to be like Jan, a young man with hopes and dreams. And they both hug each other. Jan even told Steve that without him, he wouldn't be on this career path. It shows that no matter how much the conflict is, Steve is still Jan's guardian, his dad, and Jan is a child that Steve had and adored. When Jan was very distant from his family because of his racing career, his dad is still supportive to him. For a racing sim movie, they did the family bit pretty well than I expected, which actually became most people's criticism because they find his romantic side pretty underwhelming, and it's obvious why. Jan's main focus as a character is his family, specifically his dad, not his girlfriend. It shows that no matter how rough the situation can be, family tops it all. God, it sounds like I'm doing a 7 hours deep dive on fucking Fast and Furious. But it shows that no matter how rough the situation is, whether it be losing someone you love or hurting someone you love, family will come and fix everything. And when a family exists, we learn so much from it, such as be good to your parents, care for others, and never lose hope. So to state and conclude, family, parental issues, and so on and so forth is something that we can obviously relate. I mean, the last point I just made about we learn how to care for others comes from our parents is something that we already knew, that we practice it every day. Basically, in every stories, parents and family has always been put at the top priority of love to create characters, to create someone, to create heroes. Again, I don't come from a point of view to try to snipe older movies and saying that these and these are bad, like Indiana Jones and The Mummy specifically is two of my childhood movies, and they are still considered one of the best pieces of cinema history, but what I'm saying is that it's okay to be critical of something. I mean, if we can all agree that Star Wars Episode 1, Episode 2, and Episode 3, and I cannot believe that I'm so rant-free about it, is a trilogy so bad but has some good messaging behind it, I think it's reasonable to acknowledge some flaws in the past. And with that being said, thank you for sticking to the end of this video. I'm trying to make it not too serious but also not full of jokes because I feel like it'll be easier to get my message across. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and comment. And if you want to support the channel, then subscribing is appreciated.
And no matter how much more sugar our grandfather added, we never left her side. We never left her side because that was the best day of our day. My grandmother was clearly exercising power over us, was clearly competing with the fact that our grandfather always wanted us around him, and she always won. Our grandmother always won. Now, the serious question here is when our grandmothers tell us stories, they tend to inject these stories with values, with meanings. Sometimes we do this, we inject things, but our grandmothers, our moms, they speak spontaneously. They speak from personal experience. They tell us stories about their own lives. They describe life beyond the armistice line, for example. My grandmother told us stories when she was a kid, when she was a newly married wife who would spend months plowing her land, harvesting her crops.